Hello, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Lisa DeAngelis. I am here with Beret Arcaya. Beret was kind enough to join us as part of this year's annual conference and speak at our opening day general session, which took place on Friday, June 25th. As part of her offering to this community and this conference, she chose to share with us an address that was given by Marjory Barlow in 1965, titled The Teaching of F. Matthias Alexander. I've asked Beret to join me today for a little question and answer session so we can delve just a bit deeper into the address that Beret chose to share with us and into just a little bit deeper about Marjory Barlow and her approach to examining the work of Alexander throughout her life and how that affects us as individuals and as an organization moving forward. So thank you, Beret, so much for being willing to speak with me today.
Oh, Lisa, thank you. It's delightful.
Yes. So we'll just jump right in with a couple questions. First of all, tell us a little bit more about the context of this address, if you don't mind, and then specifically why you chose to share it with our community.
Well, it was given in 1965 at the anniversary of Alexander's death, 10 years on of
Mm,
his death. And clearly, everyone in that audience had studied with a first generation teacher, obviously, and many of them would have had Alexander's hands on them themselves. And so that's a very different audience than we have today. Totally different. And everything she says is applicable today. Absolutely. She thought it necessary to remind them about the principles and to take us through step by step in this address to how he did what he did.
mm,
And to remind us to read the books, which I'm afraid many of us don't because we do find it difficult.
mhm.
But it would be so valuable if we could listen to what she has to say and use it in our work with ourselves and with our pupils.
Thank you. Yes. When I first read this address, it was almost a bit shocking to me how relevant and poignant much of her commentary and language was and still is today, almost going on 56 years now. So I think there's something to be said for that, definitely. And when we were discussing the development of you speaking at this conference, we titled this little section Shadow and Substance, which came from a line in this address. Can you talk a little bit more about that line specifically?
Well, yes, Alexander was capable of thinking in a completely new way, and it is still shockingly new today.
Mm,
And even pupils of ours who have had a good many lessons from us are having trouble, may I say in the vernacular, wrapping their head around his ideas, the substance of his ideas. And she says in the address that we are his shadow, his ever lengthening shadow. And we stand in the shadow of, imagine a great light of humanity.
mm,
There are very few really great truths on this planet. And they're like a white light, right? And we stand in the shadow of that, and we're hoping that we can pass that white light on, that truth on.
mm. That's really, really nice. It makes me almost think of an image of a lighthouse, that the further away you get, it's a little bit more dissipated, but there is really sort of a very, very strong, solid core to the source of that light, to the source of that idea. And I think
Right.
that's something really, really lovely for us to remember because we continue it on. We are the only way this work continues on.
Yes, you become a lighthouse yourself.
Mhm.
You actually illuminate yourself with your thought, with your direction, with your quiet.
Mm,
And so you are actually refracting Alexander's original light through yourself, if you will. And that's how you teach. You teach what you are, by the way, whether it's French or cooking or Alexander technique, or I don't mind what it is. You can only teach what you are.
Hmm.
And in this work, that's very, very true. There's, it's really, you can't, there's no room for any chicanery.
And what makes it so unique. Absolutely, I
Yes,
think.
it does.
Mhm.
Yes, it does. And so individual.
Yes. So we talk a little bit about this core, the substance, sort of the basics. We refer to them as the principles of this work. Very often, topics, ideas, things, people have principles. Why are the principles of this work so important?
They are the work. They are the work. A principle is a foundation. It is the bedrock upon which things are built and things are created and developed. He developed a principle of education that is 180 degrees different
Mm.
from anything we have ever learned, even in ancient Greece, about education.
Mm.
So, in all the written history we have of mankind, this is a new idea. Stop trying to get things right. We're all trying to get it right. We're all of us trying to do well, trying to achieve, trying to get out of school to get into a better school, to get a better job, to move in the direction we want to, even if it's in a corporate ladder. It doesn't matter. We're trying to get somewhere. Even a career criminal is trying to be a very good criminal and not go to prison.
Mm.
So, why do we defeat ourselves? And Alexander figured out how he was defeating himself by first taking responsibility and not expecting that medical help would help him, would get to the bottom of it. His
Yeah,
family
that's
and
great.
friends, his family and friends must have thought that he was out of his mind to set up those mirrors and be several years in front of the mirrors,
Mm.
right?
Yes. Yes. Well, and especially in a time now where our attention span has grown so short because we are so used to the instant gratification of this. This time, it also strikes me, that the principles being the work also provide us with such a beautiful way to check in with ourselves, to sort of recheck in, to recalibrate, reorient, if you will, when it comes to where we are in any given moment and moving forward. So this is a little bit of a juxtaposition almost, because then does our work stay relevant by staying the same or changing? How do we remedy
Well, human beings haven't essentially changed very much since the caves.
that?
The biggest aspect that we deal with, and why this work is always going to be relevant, is that no matter how our environment changes around us, with artificial intelligence, with driverless cars, with facial recognition that can be used for good or not good against the populace, no matter what the developments, we carry within ourselves an ever growing aspect of anxiety and unquiet.
Mm.
And we go outside of ourselves to deal with that. We will, many of us try to meditate. We will, I say, try to meditate because we try to calm ourselves down.
Mm.
We try to quiet our mind. And this very often does not work. I happen to know with very good friends who've had 30, 40 years of intense Buddhist practices. And they are the most unquiet people I've met. Their necks and shoulders are tight. They are rigid with wanting to be good. They're trying so hard to be good people,
Mm.
even though they believe in basic goodness of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, to answer your question, human nature and the human being and being life aware of itself creates consciousness as a weapon very often. We're conscious of failing. We're conscious of the shortness of our lives. We're conscious of time running out. We're conscious of not having the things that we were expected to have,
Mm.
or that we're somehow not content animals. We are not peaceful animals. And this work is actually a way in which we can master ourselves. That's what it's about. Not mastering the outside world, which we're doing at a very fast pace.
Mm-hmm.
The rapid changes in our society, it's just overwhelming.
Absolutely.
It's forcing us to stop and to take stock. And I think that's why the work will always be relevant.
Mm.
I think we're becoming racier inside. I think we're becoming more unquiet inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the issues of drugs, street drugs, and prescription drugs are largely to try to ameliorate this inner anxiety, this runaway pattern.
Mm-hmm.
How can it not be relevant? Human beings are human beings.
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think the question of relevancy is an interesting one, because it really strikes me that we enjoy defining ourselves by the differences. And there's oftentimes, I think it's easy to hold on to those differences as unique qualities, when in reality, they don't have to be separate things. We don't have to be different to be unique. And we can also, it's a yes and.
Well,
It's
we're
not
all
exclusionary.
right. We are all unique.
Mhm.
The thing that makes us the same, like cookie cutters, is the anxiety and the rashness and the unthinking impulsiveness,
Mhm.
and then the way we put our foots in our mouth, feet in our mouth, foots in our mouths, and the way we, we just make life so much harder for ourselves than it needs to be. The
Mhm.
way we blame the outside world for that.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, I have one more question for you, but before I ask it, I'm going to just share a short clip of Marjory Barlow in an interview conversation with Joan Shirley from 1986, where she's asked a question about where she sees the work going. So we'll just move to that clip and then rejoin for one last question.
Do you look forward to further developments in this work, either for yourself or through students that you have trained? Where do you see the Alexander technique headed?
I look forward to it developing in many, many different ways. FM used to say, we're only on the fringe of this thing, only on the fringe. We've got so much more to learn, and it will develop in all sorts of directions and be applied to all sorts of different things. But the danger is that the real basis of it will get lost. And he said, he continually used to say to us, stick to principle. If you stick to principle, if you use the basic thing that I used to get from where I was to where I wanted to be, you can't go wrong. And people have so many different talents and gifts and directions in which they want to go. And given that basic fidelity, I think is the word, to that thing, you can't go wrong.
So that's nice. That's some beautiful reflections from a lovely woman.
Mm.
And so I guess in turn, my final question for you today is, how can we use this specific moment in time to move ourselves forward, both as individuals and as an organization?
Ah,
Nothing major, nothing big.
as an organization, I think we have to become a great deal more easygoing with each other and far less judgmental. I think for people who are supposed to not judge, we're pretty judgmental.
Mm,
And I think it keeps us back.
mm,
Uh, I also think that how to go forward, you have to do that with yourself. You have to look at your teaching and ask yourself some questions in no particular order. One question, do I understand what she's talking about antagonistic poles? Do I get that? What is that?
mm,
How do I teach that? How do I have that more in myself? Do I understand what it is to really inhibit
mm,
and really direct without doing the directions or freezing myself in an attempt to stop?
mm,
You know,
mhm,
do I understand what the principles are? Um, Obviously, in 1965, she wanted to remind the STAT members who had all had lessons with a first generation teacher or Alexander himself, she needed to reiterate that.
mm,
We need to reiterate it now. I think we have to go forward with a more welcoming, wide acceptance that we're all of us in the same boat. No one is going to attain perfect awareness. No one's going to walk on water around here or levitate. It's not happening. And you have to be willing to take every failure, every time you notice something you're doing to yourself, as a great pleasure and say, wow, I can learn something from that. That's a good opportunity. Not lose patience with yourself. Not any of this. If you don't do this, it'll be harder for you to do that.
mhm, mhm,
And the other thing I would say is to keep a sense of humor. It's so important. This work is so tough. It just, if it does its work, it eats away at your egotism. And it's hard. It feels like dying sometimes
mm,
to lose this shell we get into.
mm. Yes, it's such a beautiful reminder that the work ultimately is individual with each of us on ourselves.
Yes,
And regardless of the circumstances around us, we have that to come back to over and over again.
that's right.
And there is a lot to be grateful for in that. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
being willing to share some of your thoughts
Sure.
and for sharing this lovely address with us. I hope you all will take a little time to read through or listen to it again and just see what you pick up the second or the third time. There's so much wisdom in these words, and we have so much wisdom to share with each other. All the best to you on your journey, and we'll see you soon.